If you're looking for a break from all of the mama noise and the loneliness and overwhelm that we can all feel at times, my guest today is here to help. Welcome to Fit News. I am your host, Jen Shaver, and joining me today is Doctor of Pharmacy, Dr. Elisabeth Wygant. She is a mother of two precious little girls, a wife to an incredible hubby, a functional nutrition expert, a speaker, writer for Best Holistic Life magazine, host of the Femme Formula podcast, a mompreneur, and she's passionate about helping women to reclaim their vitality through optimized wellness. At 25 years old, she was making serious money, working the 9-to-6 grind in a high-paced career and continuing to make those moves up the ladder. When she became pregnant with her first child, she began to realize that life was more than looking good on paper. But out of all the chaos, trauma, and struggles she endured as a mother who was working full-time in a high-stress career and wearing all the hats, came an epiphany. She is now on a mission to use her own personal experiences and to offer them as guidance to women everywhere. If you're searching for answers for those often brushed off questions around women's specific health concerns around nutrition, hormone health, period health, literally all of women's health, Dr. Elisabeth has your answers. Dr. Elisabeth, welcome to the show today. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. And what a great introduction. That was so kind of you to welcome me with such open arms into your community. So I'm excited for today.
Yes, we're happy to have you here. You have such a wealth of knowledge to share with our listeners today. Let's talk about some hormonal harmony, because we know that, as women we're always dealing with our hormones, right? We hit puberty and we've got the hormones going. Then we hit birthing time and we've got hormones during pregnancy, we've got hormones after pregnancy, and then we hit perimenopause, and then we hit menopause. I mean, throughout our life, we go through so many hormone changes as women. So we got to learn how to manage these things, right?
Yes, 100%. And it does really start from learning it at a young age, I think is super helpful. But often we're not taught that in school, and unfortunately, what ends up happening is we're kind of left with feeling like we're meant to struggle, right? Our periods are supposed to be awful. Perimenopause is supposed to be a complete drag, and postmenopause is just another thing that oftentimes I hear women say, I just am struggling with this phase of my life. So it's kind of like we're fed this narrative and it's ingrained in our beliefs that this is just the way it is, but it doesn't have to be, right? There are ways that we can mitigate a lot of these symptoms, and most of it, if not I would say the majority of it really is nutrition based.
Yeah.
And that is really my passion, is educating on how to use nutrition to optimize your hormone levels. And it can be done. My path was, I ended up getting sick with mastitis with my second daughter, and I was in the hospital. And then that was kind of like my moment of a low and realizing I'm not taking care of myself. And from there, I just really dove into functional medicine and functional nutrition and learned that, oh my gosh, nutrition is it. This is so crucial. Even though I felt I was eating well prior to, I was always aware, I could do more, right? And really dig in and take care of myself on a different level.
Yeah. And that's so important to, like you said, we might think that we've got it all figured out, or that we're eating, the healthy, quote unquote, things, but there is always something more. We can always take a deeper dive, right? And look at exactly what is going on, because also along with that, we might be eating some of these healthy things, but some of these healthy things might not necessarily be loving us back.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's true.
it's important to look, to go a little deeper.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. So I was going to say, you mentioned the suffering through, and I think
Um,
that mindset is something that is really worth looking at as well, because just because grandma suffered through it doesn't mean that everybody in the preceding generations also has to do the
right,
same.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's where, a big part of my passion lies as well. As I know when I'm educating women,
Hmm.
we're naturally the nurturers, like that's innate within all of us. Especially if you are a mother, like
Hmm.
you're going to educate either inadvertently or completely on purpose, very intentionally,
Right.
those that you love. And
Hmm.
what ends up happening is like it's a domino effect, it's a ripple effect. So you can start to implement what we'll talk about here today
Hmm.
in your own life, but in turn, it's going to help change the lives of other people that you know
Yeah.
and love.
Yeah. And that's important. Let's change the narrative, and
Right.
let's start today.
Yeah,
Let's start
exactly.
today. Change the narrative moving forward for all future generations. And let's make that change start with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's critical. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You, that's something too that is um often overlooked. Like we will wear so many hats and
Mhm.
juggle so many different things in our lives, women in particular, and completely put ourselves at the bottom of the list.
Right.
And when you're doing that, you are running on empty.
Hmm.
So it's eventually going to cause you to burn out.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like your cell phone or your car, right? You got to
Yeah.
put gas in the car, and you got to recharge the phone. And
Mhm.
if you don't, they don't work. Well, your
Right.
body works the same way,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
So let's talk about some hormone health and some hormone tips that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to gear this towards women who are kind of like in the perimenopause and beyond range.
Hmm.
Reason being is because this is an age group that I've found, again, like there's not much education there.
Right.
I feel like younger women are getting introduced to this a little bit more frequently. And let's just say, like, you can implement these measures prior to perimenopause as well. But I really
Yeah.
want to focus on the hormones at play. I'm
Hmm.
going to walk through that and then just some real quick tips, like nutritional tips that you
Hmm.
could implement
Okay.
starting today, right?
Yeah.
So, with perimenopause, the hormonal fluctuations going on in your body, they call it second puberty. Yes. So, and that is because
Makes sense.
right. Yeah. Like, and you think about it, like you have mood swings, there's hot flashes involved, like you can get irritable, things of that nature. Right. So, what's happening is your body is having this roller coaster of estrogen where you're literally on this wave of peaks of estrogen and then really low points of estrogen going
Mhm.
on all throughout the day over about a 10-year time span.
Wow.
Perimenopause typically it starts like around the age 40 or so,
Hmm.
but for some women it can start earlier in the mid 30s. So being aware of your cycle is really important as well. So if you are someone who can track your cycle, that's going to be really helpful for you in understanding whether or not you're starting that perimenopause shift because things will change. Your cycle will start to become irregular once that phase of your life kicks in. So that's a side note. But your estrogen, your estrogen is fluctuating often
Yeah.
and all throughout the day. And then also you're really starting to lose progesterone. And once you're through menopause, you don't make any progesterone after that point. And then you're
Hmm.
making very minimal amounts of estrogen. And then your primary hormone is going to be testosterone. So you have like a complete flip of what's going on in your body from
Yeah.
where you were before, which gives you those perimenopause symptoms again, like the hot flashes. Migraines are another one. A lot of women have digestive health issues
Mhm.
where they feel bloated immediately after eating a meal, and that has a lot to do with your gut health. Oftentimes it's linked to what's called SIBO, which is small
Mhm.
intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it really gets misdiagnosed as IBS, but that's not, yeah, so that's
Wow.
not necessarily the case. Oftentimes women will be diagnosed with fibromyalgia as well. And really what it is just, it's this adjustment to these hormones, right? Your body's trying to figure out what's going on,
Yeah.
um, really internally with these different fluctuations in hormone levels. So just be aware that you can get misdiagnosed with
Mhm.
with fibromyalgia, with IBS, and maybe ask your doctor to check your hormone levels.
Yeah.
That's a piece of advice I would highly recommend.
Yeah. That's
Other
kind of
symptom,
scary.
yeah, it is. Yeah. So, um, knowledge is power. So
Yeah.
knowing this and going into it with this new knowledge, you
Mhm.
can have that open conversation with your provider and just say, hey, can we look at this? Can we
Right.
check my hormone levels? And hopefully they're willing to do that for you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know,
Because if they diagnose you with one of these and then they want to give you medication for this,
right?
right? I mean,
Yes.
that's the scary part is now you're taking a medication, which as we know, all medications have some type of side effect. And so, I mean,
Mhm.
it's like this snowball effect. And if that's not really what you have, and yet you're taking this medication, it can just lead to
To other,
issues. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Wow.
it's pretty scary,
Yeah.
but you know, the more we talk about it, the more women can
Hmm.
use that to their advantage and have that power and hold and stand in that power for
Yeah.
themselves. Um, and some other things that I often hear, my clients say, or I'm on calls with women,
Hmm.
is they have trouble with like the stubborn weight around the midsection,
Hmm.
right? So
Right.
that's associated with this hormonal shift.
Right.
And then also issues with their, like if they go to the doctor, they'll have issues with their glucose, their blood sugar levels too.
Oh.
And a lot of this has to do with the phrase insulin resistance. And this is something where your body isn't able to take up blood sugar in
Hmm.
your bloodstream appropriately, and you're producing too much insulin, which then it has this whole like cascade of events that can occur and potentially can lead to type 2 diabetes if it's not treated.
Yeah.
So what I will say here is, just to kind of like cap off symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, is you can take control of these symptoms through what you eat.
Yeah.
So what I like to recommend is really like foods that are going to allow for cooling of inflammation. Essentially, a lot of what's going on in your body is this inflammatory process, specifically when we're talking about like the SIBO, issues with your body's ability to uptake blood sugar and things like that. So
Hmm.
we want to look at an anti-inflammatory diet.
Hmm.
And I know that diet culture itself is very confusing,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
there's so much out there. I mean, all you have to do is, pop on Instagram or Facebook and you're bombarded with 40 million different diets. Eat this, don't
mhm.
eat that. Eat it this time, don't eat it that time. I mean, it's just,
It's
you could
overwhelming.
get overwhelmed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I tried keto diet after I had my second daughter, I believe, one of them. Um and what ended up happening for me was like the first 3 months I did it, I felt really good.
Yeah.
And then by the end, because I only did it for 6 months and it wasn't very strict by any means, but I eliminated a good amount of my complex carbohydrates. And by like the 6-month mark, I felt horrible.
Yeah.
And this is before I knew, like, oh my gosh, I really need those for my body. This is way before like I started my practice or anything.
Yeah.
And then after like indulging in the literature, I'm like, no, I need those as a woman. I need those complex carbohydrates. So
Yes.
like, and I'm educated in the healthcare field. So
Right.
if you're listening to this and you've gotten confused or overwhelmed, or you've fallen prey to some sort of fad diet, no, you're not alone.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that being said, like the anti-inflammatory diet, I have a really very simple equation
Okay.
to help women navigate through this. And you might be familiar with it because
Mm-hmm.
really it's just looking at your macros.
Right.
And it's eating clean proteins, your complex carbohydrates,
Mm-hmm.
and then healthy saturated fats.
Yeah.
When you think of your plate that way, it really just simplifies things. It quiets all that noise out there, and just it will make your life so much easier.
Right. Right. And when you really look around, I know a lot of the women that I work with, protein is what's missing, right, from their
Yes.
diet. And this is such a critical time during that perimenopause time that protein is so essential in terms of, helping us to maintain that lean muscle, helping us to build lean muscle, that we really need to be focusing on prioritizing that protein.
Yes. Yep. You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so important. They're finding that like longevity and quality of life is linked to the health of your muscle.
Yeah.
And you definitely need a protein source at every single meal.
Yeah.
To help sustain that. And then couple that especially too with weightlifting, which you are like, that's your jam, right?
Right.
So, that is absolutely essential for women too.
Right. Right. Yeah. But I feel like that protein has just, kind of been shoved off the plate because, a lot of times it is a lot quicker to just grab the donut for breakfast, right? Or, grab the piece of toast, but you can still have your toast. I'm not, we need our carbs. Nobody's bad mouthing the carbs as we just, as you just demonstrated that we definitely need, and that's the other thing, carbs have been demonized. So we need to make sure that we're still getting them, but we're getting, the more nutritious carbs, not the
refined, easy stuff.
Right. Right. Right.
The junk.
Yeah. Yeah. But that we're reaching for that protein first, because that's going to be what's going to set us up for success as we age.
Absolutely. And again, like this is so important prior to perimenopause. Like this can be applied across the board, but especially crucial for perimenopause. When I think about the woman who's grabbing the granola bar or the donut or whatever, like I get it. I feel for you. I was there at one point, like when I was in my career. I would run out the door. I always call it running out the door with my hair and heels on fire and like a granola bars in my bag. And by the time I get to work, I either forget I have it or it's crushed in my purse. So like, I feel for you. But making small adjustments to your routine is like a total game changer. So flipping the way you think about your food and how you're going to create your food is important. And what I ended up doing was making smoothies because I could take it and go.
Yep.
Getting a great protein powder, coconut milk, that good healthy saturated fat in there. And then I would add fruits and vegetables into it and I have a complete meal.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because I mean, and that's a great way to start your day, because not only are you getting your protein, but you're also throwing in the fiber. And you start your day with high protein and high fiber, and come mid-afternoon, you're not grabbing the chips in the pantry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It changes your palate. It
Mm-hmm.
keeps you fuller longer. So it keeps you satiated. You're not getting hangry, you know. So those are really important things to be aware of as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that all, again, that has to do with hormones too. So that being hangry comes from not filling up enough with the right food.
Right.
So your body is just quick to absorb whatever it was you ate, like that donut.
Mm-hmm.
And, 30 minutes to an hour go by and you're hungry again, right?
Right.
So being mindful of what you eat is really important. And another thing too here with like allowing for that anti-inflammatory diet to come into play, you're helping your gut heal.
Mm-hmm.
And your gut health is so important.
Oh,
Hippocrates, he was the founder of modern medicine. I'm doing air
yeah.
quotes for those
Yes.
listening. But he says that all disease starts in the gut,
Good. Yep.
and it couldn't be more true.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's really key in your success with your overall health and in incorporating these types of foods.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also going to help with the feelings of being bloated after you eat immediately afterwards. So it's
Right.
going to help with if there's potential SIBO or IBS, if that's what your doctor diagnosed you with. It's going to help with any chronic pain. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
balance your hormones overall, um, because your gut plays a role in that. And then it's also going to help with the issue of insulin resistance if that's something that you struggle with as well.
Yeah. 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 And I think that, you know, gut health it's now starting to make its way up the chain and be a little
Mhm.
more prominent.
Mhm.
But I think there's probably still some people that are like, oh, that's so fancy, or
Mhm. Woo
all
woo.
yeah, woo woo alternative.
Mhm.
But it really, really is something that as a midlife woman, you need to be mindful of,
Mhm.
take into consideration, and really focus on if you want to have better health as you age.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's really, I will say that's where I started with my journey into functional nutrition and functional medicine because I had been on antibiotics.
Hmm.
After having mastitis, I was on IV antibiotics and then
Oh,
oral afterwards because I kept getting infections and
wow.
my gut health was totally wrecked. And I started having weird vertigo and like just very bizarre symptoms. And I'm like, gosh, I feel like this is related.
Yeah,
And I started doing research and I'm like, oh, it's got to be my gut. And then implemented different techniques, that of which was that equation that we just said,
right,
along with probiotics were really important for me at that time.
right.
And within, I would say like a month or so, I started feeling a lot better. It
Yeah,
took a while for me to get back to like feeling really good, back to
right.
myself, probably 6 months or so, but
Yeah,
it started with my gut.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the gut has, such uh, overreaching effect on our overall health, on
Mhm,
our joints, on our energy level, on our weight management, on our hormone. I
mhm.
mean, it's all just connected, right?
It
It's
is.
and
Mhm.
the gut is the second brain, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I sometimes argue that it's the first.
yeah, right, right, right. Well, it's the gateway to better health.
Yeah, yeah, and
A
your
healthy,
your
yeah,
your gut and your brain have direct communication with one another, and
right.
um, there's more nerves that go from your gut to your brain than your brain to your gut. So it's like it's a big deal,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's something that it's definitely more people need to start talking about, more people need to
Mhm,
start focusing on,
mhm,
and taking into consideration. I mean, especially when you look at the standard American diet, right?
Right. Sad. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad, right?
Sad diet.
And they don't call it sad for nothing.
Right.
But, you know, we know what that has to be doing
Mm-hmm.
to gut health in
Oh, yeah.
general. So
Mhm.
we know that the gut health of the majority of the people is probably not the best and could be improved by implementing some simple
Basic.
changes. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
very simple.
yeah.
And that's all that we need to make it. I
Right.
like to say you got to take your plate back to basics,
Hmm.
you know, and from there, things just get a whole heck of a lot better,
Right,
you
right,
know.
right, right. You have, someone might say, well, then I won't be able to eat this or I won't be able to eat that. Well, but you will feel better. So what's more
Mhm,
important to you? Is feeling
mhm.
better and aging better more important, or is, eating the
Whatever
sad
the
way,
thing.
right?
Yeah,
Better,
yeah.
that's a temporary good quote unquote feeling, right?
Yeah.
Eating the whatever. And it's
Mhm.
not that, okay, once in a while, but right now, a lot of people, it's not just once in a while, it's every
Every
meal.
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I will say too with the standard American diet, if you think about it, so there's the refined carbohydrates and simple sugars,
Hmm.
there's hydrogenated oils, um, and then there's gluten, right?
Hmm.
So those three things are addictive.
Yeah.
Your brain gets addicted to them.
Yeah.
And for example, like with sugar, it's 30% more addictive than morphine. And that is a
Oh,
opioid narcotic pain medication.
wow.
So think about that.
Hmm.
And, yes, for those of you who maybe are the person who's eating that type of food, like I think of fast food all the time. I'm like, that's why they're so successful. Like that's their, those are the components of all their meals,
Right.
right? Those three things.
Right.
And they are successful because they can incorporate all of them. But like if
Hmm.
you're struggling with that, there's a reason because your brain is addicted. Like your body is addicted to those things. But once you start working your way off of them and implementing things that are going to be healthy and helpful to your
Right.
body, your palate will change and you won't even want to eat those types of food, you know,
Right.
anymore, or hardly ever.
Right. Right. And it
So,
doesn't, if this is something that someone is struggling with, it doesn't mean you have to go cold turkey and just
right.
throw it all out the window. It just means on day one, let's eat less than what we did the day before. And then let's keep moving backwards, right?
Exactly.
Less and less and less until we're at our lowest level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the thing is making those small steps
Hmm.
to ultimately lead to a huge, like greater outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, is there anything else that we may have missed that we need to share, Elizabeth?
I will say, so for those of you who have enjoyed this conversation, I know I have. I love talking about this stuff. Um, I could go on for hours.
Yeah.
Um, I am hosting a free webinar.
Okay.
I'm thinking at the end of this month. I haven't like officially gotten a date on that yet, but I will make sure I get you
Hmm.
a link for
Great.
people to check it
Hmm.
out if they want to sign
Yes.
up. That's open
Uh-huh.
to them.
Yeah.
But it's a 90-minute webinar on how to balance your hormones easily and naturally. So we're
Okay.
going to really like dive more into topics like what we had here today.
Hmm.
So I will be offering that, which I'm really excited about. And then if you want to connect with me, I
Yes.
am on LinkedIn primarily.
Mhm.
So I'm Dr. Elisabeth Wygant on LinkedIn, and Elizabeth is with an S. Or you can go to my website, elizabethwygant.com, and you can check things out over that way as well.
Okay.
But that is what I will say. I would love to just have open conversations with anyone who is wanting to do that. And yeah, reach out to me.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much information today, Dr. Wyatt. We appreciate your time and you sharing all of your knowledge.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Fit News. We will catch you next time.